as leaders grapple with big questions about the future of the Jewish community and Jewish life. I'm honored to bring together some of the finest minds and leading thinkers on what the future might look like and what we need to do to get there. We can't wait around and hope for the best. We have to create our own future, because the future is starting now. Hello, my friends. It's good to see you. This week, we are honored to welcome Dr. Ron Wolfson. Dr. Wolfson is the Fingerhut Professor of Education at American Jewish University, president of the Kripke Institute. Dr. Wolfson is a prolific author. Some of his books include Relational Judaism, Using the Power of Relationships to Transform the Jewish Community, The 7 Questions You're Asked in Heaven, Reviewing and Renewing Your Life on Earth, God's To-Do List, and The Spirituality of Welcoming, How to Transform Your Congregation into a Sacred Community. But most importantly, Dr. Wolfson is Zadie Ronnie to Gabe and Ellie. And it is such an honor to have you here today, Ron Wolfson. How are you?
Thank you, David. It's great to see you. And congratulations on all your wonderful work.
Oh,
really,
thank you
really
so
amazing.
much. Thank you so much. And I know that you brought your books, and I brought my books also. It's unconscionable to me that anybody would have not read most of your books. But in case you haven't, please go out and grab them. And your latest book is not Relational Judaism, right? That's
No.
Because the handbook just came out a few years ago, I think, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes. The newest book is this one. Let's see.
Oh, that's right. Raising an A+ Human Beings. Yes.
Yes, I wrote it with Dr. Bruce Powell, who is one of the leading Jewish day school educators in the country.
Wonderful.
And it's a wonderful book about Jewish school culture. But there's also a chapter for parents and grandparents on how to raise an A+ human being. It's really been a wonderful book to put out in the world, and it's doing very well.
And as a grandfather yourself, you must have brought a little bit of your own, what you've learned on your own to the table, yes?
Yeah, we have two little ones. They're not so little anymore. We have an 11-year-old, Ellie Brooklyn. And Gabriel Elijah is 8.
Wow.
Can you imagine, David? I have a granddaughter named Brooklyn.
I love it. I love it.
I actually, an earlier project of mine was with my colleague and friend, dear friend, Rabbi Larry Hoffman. He'd been in college in New York. I live in Los Angeles at American Jewish University, and I called Larry and I said, Larry, I have my first grandchild. Her name is Ellie Brooklyn. And Larry said to me from New York, Ron, you're going to have four more grandchildren.
What, one for each borough? Yeah.
If you have a girl, you can call her Malka, Queens. And if you have a boy, you can call her the Bronx.
One for each borough. I love it. I know. So I want to start by going back in time a little bit. You were talking about congregational transfer. Oh, you know what? I should back up. The goal here for me is for us to struggle with really big questions. The questions that you, I think, have been asking for a long time. I found myself so frustrated with the synagogues, the Jewish communities, the leaders, myself often, who get stuck in the minutia, who get so busy with the tweaks around the edges that we never allow ourselves and give ourselves time to really ask fundamental big questions about what the future of Judaism is going to look for. You've been asking these questions way back in 2006 when the Spirituality of Welcoming first came out. You were teaching us about some of the transformative work that we need to do. And I'm wondering, how have we done? Did we heed your advice? Are you seeing evidence of that?
Yeah. Thank you, David. Yes, I believe so. Relational Judaism in particular has been adopted widely in Jewish organizations, from congregations to schools to camps, federations, all sorts of organizations. Because I think the main message which resonated with people was that the 20th century model of engagement was based on programming and transaction. I become a member of your synagogue, and you give me a rabbi on call, a religious school for my kids that often ended with bar bat mitzvah, and high holiday seats, or today a Zoom link, which is something we should circle back to because that has been transformed during the pandemic.
Absolutely.
Or programmatic. Let's get people to come out to programs, or now let's get people to Zoom in.
Log on
and
for programs,
that's the level of engagement. But what about the relationships that we're building on 3 tiers, really? One is the tier of connecting people to the Jewish experience, which we do a pretty good job of in synagogue life, JCCs, schools, camps. That's not an issue that I've been concerned with, really. And the other 2 tiers are what are really important. One is, have we connected the leadership of our communities to each individual member and guest we welcome in? I often say to my rabbi friends like you, well, the greatest compliment you can get is when someone says, Rabbi David, he's my rabbi. Rabbi Shira, she's my rabbi. This notion of my means that you've made a connection. You've built a relationship with your people. That's the kind of second tier of engagement. The third tier is even more important, which is, have we linked the people in our communities to each other? So there'll be a group of people who are with you in good times and in challenging times, like we've been living through these last almost 2 years. The congregations, for example, that have done the work of relational engagement, and our campaign manifesto is in that book you held up, the Relational Judaism Handbook, which I wrote with my 2 wonderful co-authors, Rabbi Nicole Auerbach at Central Synagogue and Rabbi Lydia Medwin at the Temple in Atlanta. It's all about how do we create connective tissue between the members of the communities we serve. And that's really the key, I think, to the synagogue of the 21st century. That's a relational community.
Is that harder to do now than it was before? And I'm actually not asking about the Zoom piece. I'm actually thinking back to when I was a kid. Everyone was a part of the synagogue because that's what you did. We belonged to a synagogue, and it became, even my family was not terribly religious. In some sense, it was a little bit of the center of our universe. And that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. I think the culture is shifting. So is it harder to build those relationships nowadays?
Well, it's not easy to do this. This is retail business. This is one-on-one. It's not wholesale. Yep. On the other hand, it's absolutely critical, especially now, because when anybody can get any Jewish information they want or need online in a nanosecond, why join a synagogue community?
Exactly.
Why send the kids to school? It has to be something deeper, and that's relationship, connectiveness. That's what's so critical. And our communities have to make a value proposition that resonates with people. You come here and belong to our community, and you're going to find a path to meaning. What's it all about? You're going to find your purpose in life. what are you going to do with your God-given talents and spiritual gifts to continue the work of creation? Uh, you'll find in this community a sense of belonging, a group of people who care about you. And this will be a place where you celebrate the many blessings in your life. That's, I think, the core of the answer to the question, why join a synagogue, a JCC, send your kids to school? What's the value proposition? During the pandemic, we've learned it's even more important, as difficult as it is. Why? As I like to say to synagogue boards, if there's one thing we learned during COVID-19, it's that a synagogue is not a building.
Yes.
It's a community of sacred relationships. And again, the synagogues and JCCs and schools that get this have invested in developing small groups, in connecting people to each other, in making sure that every member, every guest feels a connection to some representative of the congregation or the center or the school or the camp. The places that did that pre-pandemic have not only sustained themselves during the pandemic, but some have actually grown
right
in membership during the
They've
pandemic.
thrived, yeah.
Yeah.
What does belonging mean nowadays?
Well, I think belonging is really the question of who is in my circle of friends I can depend on. I'll give you an example. My wife, Susie, received a kidney transplant, a life-saving kidney transplant last year at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. We live in Los Angeles, but we schlepped to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester because Susie and I were both born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska. And when you really needed excellent medical care, that's where you went. Not that there isn't in Omaha, but if it was a serious issue, our family went to Mayo Clinic. And we were there just before the pandemic hit. And 2 days after Susie's transplant, which was successful, she had a major complication requiring a second surgery to reposition the organ. A week later, I donated one of my kidneys, my spare, in a paired kidney exchange on Susie's behalf so she could get this life-saving transplant. Then the pandemic hit, and we were locked down in Rochester, Minnesota for nearly 8 months. Now, who sustained us during those 8 months? Yes, our family. Yes, our friends. Yes, the 25,000 unique visits to our Caring Bridge site, the platform where you can post news about your healing process. But what really sustained us was quite interesting. What ended up after all the emails, all the phone calls, all the gifts of food and stuffed kidneys, what ended up on our bedstand at the Hilton Hotel where we lived for those 8 months? Handwritten cards from family and friends who took the time during a pandemic to write us a handwritten note and to put it in the real mail, the snail mail as we used to call it, and get it to us in Rochester. That's what sustained us, because it said to us, these are the people who belong to us. We belong to this chevra. We have this connective tissue that is the core even of religion. One of the points that Bruce Powell makes in this new book, Raising A+ Human Beings, is the root of obligation is the Latin lig, L-I-G, obligation. It's also the root of religion, lig, and ligament, Your ligaments are what are the connecting tissues in your body. So to me, virtually everything relates to this notion of relationship. I'm thrilled that the book has resonated. And I think there is strong evidence that most of our Jewish organizations have taken it to heart. And it's not that programs are not the solution, it's that what happens in the programs, even on Zoom, where's the 5-minute breakout room where you meet someone you didn't know? Where's the proneg before the Friday night service online? Where's the oneg where I can stay on for a few minutes and talk to my friends after the service is over? Where are the one-on-one conversations we could be having with our members to make sure that they feel they've been seen and heard? You know, my friend Harleen Appelman at the Covenant Foundation likes to say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's the root of relational Judaism.
That's so beautiful. What you just said about being seen and being heard, it really resonates with me. It's one of the things that I talk a lot about with communities is how can we, as Rabbi David Ingber likes to say, the roomers and the Zoomers, how can we make sure that those who are in the room and those who are in the Zoom are all feeling seen and heard and recognize. One of my struggles with, we're getting a little off tangent, but one of my struggles with leading services on YouTube or Facebook is that it's not two-way. It's that as a participant, it's almost unimportant that I'm there to the people leading. And I want to be important. I want to matter. I want to be seen as a participant. And the gift, I think, of the Zoom and Meet and whatever, all these other, is that you and I from across the country, we can see each other. What a tremendous gift we've been given.
Yeah, in fact, some people have said that they prefer a religious experience, a prayer service on Zoom, because you can see the officiants so much clearer.
Yeah.
You're not sitting in the back of a sanctuary,
right,
where it's difficult to see. There's a kind of intimacy, ironically, on Zoom that you may not have in person. Now, for me personally, it's a substitute for being in person. And God willing, we'll be able to be back in much larger numbers in the next number of months, when it looks promising that the pandemic might, God willing, be subsiding. And so many people look forward to that opportunity to be back together in person, with or without masks, to greet each other as we normally do on a Shabbat or a holiday. I mean, it feels like almost a dream, but we're getting closer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when you mentioned being able to see more clearly the leaders, a couple of things came to mind. One is a lot of synagogues are doing Torah cams. So they put a camera over the Torah. And what I love about that is people who have perhaps never been up to the Torah can actually see what's being read. And the other thing that comes to mind is what I consider to be the great democratization is that as a rabbi, as a leader, as a speaker, my box is no bigger than anyone else's on Zoom. We all have the same box. And sometimes I may be spotlighted and sometimes someone else might be, but fundamentally we're all in this together. And there's something to me that's quite beautiful about and also I think humbling and perhaps even relationship building in coming down off the bima, and we're all figuring this out together. We're all struggling through this together. All figuring this out together.
I did write a piece for American Jewish University on the future of the synagogue post-pandemic. And one of the things I pointed out in the piece is there is no going back. I think that this Zoom technology that many people had to learn in the early days of the pandemic. But now most people feel minimally proficient in using it. Will continue to be a factor in our Jewish communal life. Everything from board meetings and committee meetings, where I don't have to fight the traffic to get to one, much more convenient,
Absolutely.
probably better attendance. Even to the live streaming of services, which, again, this past High Holy Days, tens of thousands of people watching and engaging with worship experiences all over the world, where you could dip into a service anywhere at any time over the high holidays. And people who otherwise would not have been inside of a sanctuary were suddenly engaged in a spiritual experience. And that's kind of remarkable. So I think we'll continue to see that in some of the major congregations going forward.
I want to come back to the future of the synagogue. I just want to mention that Rabbi Mass is throwing in here that they have a Torah camp in their synagogue. They love it, which is fantastic. Yes. I also want to apologize because in the beginning of the broadcast, this was now about 20 minutes ago, there was a horrible echo on your voice, and that was my fault, and I fixed it, and I apologize for that. Oh. You didn't hear it, but everyone else did, and they were telling me in the comments. So, all right, so the future of the synagogue. So, again, I think that we all want to go back to being on site. I tend to not say in person because to me, I am as much in person and present when I'm online as when I'm on in the same physical space. But I do wonder about some of the gifts, as you were just saying, that this moment in time has given us, the ability to learn from anyone in the world, the ability to daven at any synagogue in the world. One of the things that I noticed during my congregational time was a lot of competition amongst synagogues, because there was this sense that there was a limited number of members and we all had to kind of, fight to get them. Do you have a sense that synagogues, that Jewish communities are going to do a better job of working together for the sake of the Jewish people? Have we learned that we can't do this all ourselves, that we have to rely on one another?
It's a great question. I hope so. I think that there are congregations that were forced to think about collaborations. There are 2 synagogues here in Los Angeles that have merged their religious schools. So instead of each of them having 50 kids, we now have a much more viable religious school with 100 kids. There have certainly been synagogues that have not been able to sustain themselves through the pandemic, and that's terribly unfortunate. But those who have reached out together to collaborate on learning experiences, on social justice work, have, I think, found that the collaborations really enhance both organizations. So I think we're likely to see more of that in the future. I think the denominational barriers between the movements have softened, which I think is a very positive move in American Jewish life. There's so much we share in common than what divides us, as significant as those divisions are, but still, just speaking about the synagogue world, we're all after the same thing, which is to engage people in a meaningful Jewish path to those things that I mentioned: meaning, purpose, belonging, and blessing. We all share that goal. So to learn from each other, I think the rabbis and educators and cantors and executive directors have a much more sharing amongst themselves.
I agree. Yeah.
On their Facebook pages and their
Yeah.
private listservs and their assemblies. And all of that is, I think, a positive for the Jewish community going forward.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, and I hope that we're able to sustain that, to keep that up. Rabbi Frisch Klein, who is a dear friend of mine, is watching, and she talks about, going back to Zoom, how Zoom has enabled people to be connected, those who can't drive at night, those with disabilities or health issues or snowbirds or others who've left the area. You wrote in your book, The Spirituality of Welcoming, you wrote, creating a culture in which every person who crosses the threshold of the congregation, it's really interesting, by the way, that you said congregation and not synagogue to me, but creating a culture in which every person who crosses the threshold of the congregation is treated as an image of God is the fundamental reason to become an enthusiastic practitioner of the spirituality of welcoming. Are those physical thresholds only? I'm sure that you mean not. And so I guess my next question is, what are the thresholds that people need to cross in the 21st century to enter into Jewish community?
Well, there are two things to say about that. One is that those of us who build the thresholds, whether they're virtual or on-site, or the language I adopted from my friend Rabbi Elaine Zecker in Boston, is on-site and online. Those of us who build those thresholds need to make them as wide and high and easy to cross as possible. That's the idea of welcoming. I have yet to connect with a synagogue that doesn't think of itself as warm and welcoming. But then once you get in, there are cliques and there are politics and so on.
That's one of the most important. That's one of the most important things, by the way, I learned from you. I've heard you say this many, many times, and it's so true. We all think that we're the most welcoming synagogue in the world. Of course we're welcoming. I'll never forget. I went to a synagogue once. I won't name it. And when I went in, the rabbi asked me, I think they were in the mode of really thinking about how can we be more welcoming? And so he asked me, and so I told him, I said, well, my first impression was when I pulled into the parking lot, I had to park in what felt like Yehupitzville because all of the spaces really near the synagogue had names on them. Reserved for, reserved for, reserved for. And I clearly there was nothing reserved for me. And then I came into the door was locked. Someone buzzed me in. Then I came into the main hall and there was no signage to tell me where the bathroom is, where the office is, and yet this community, and they were warm and welcoming, but it was so interesting how our self-perception does not always match other people's experience of that welcoming. I'm so sorry to interrupted you.
No, that's exactly right. When I was in person visiting synagogues, I would take the board and the staff out to the far reaches of the parking lot and say, you're the Schwartz family. You just came here for the first time for the bar mitzvah Saturday morning. Let's see how we get into the building. Let's see where do we park.
Right.
You're right about that. With Larry Hoffman and I, we started Synagogue 2000 in 1995. And the very first thing we did was to visit Saddleback Church in Orange County, California.
I remember this. Yep.
Yeah. And when, there were 5,000 people going into coming out of the 9 o'clock service and 5,000 people coming into the 11 o'clock service. And we were stuck in traffic. And I said to Larry, there's no way we're going to get into this place in time. First thing we saw was a big placard at the entrance of the property that said, for first-time visitors, please move in the far right-hand lane. It was a diamond lane. It was an HOV lane for first-time visitors. And it took you right to 50 spaces next to the worship center.
Right.
Outlined in green for first-time visitors.
Yep.
My mom, God bless her soul, had two donut shops in shopping centers, and the shopping center uh, business owners were told to park in the far reaches of the parking lot so the customers could be close by the entrance.
But
So,
every synagogue you go to,
I don't think,
every synagogue,
don't have a space for the rabbi and the cantor and the educator
right.
and the president of the synagogue, but it should be as welcoming as possible. And then how do you get into the building and so on? And I'll tell you, David, this is important because as we do come back into the buildings of our congregations and our JCCs and our schools, it's a chance for us to rethink how people are warmly greeted. It's a chance for us to think about how we build these relationships. And that's something that I'm thinking a lot about, actually, because I'm now working on a global network of communities celebrating Hanukkah together. It's called Hanukkah Homecoming. And if you haven't heard about it yet, there's the website. If you have an organization that's going to do something during Hanukkah, you can sign up. There's no cost. There are over 250 organizations that have already signed on from all over the world. And the idea is to put up on a website that we've created, powered by One Table platform, you may know One Table, to allow every organization that is offering some sort of gathering during Hanukkah can put up their gathering, and there will be a global searchable database. We also have the map, which indicates organizational websites. But even better, starting this week, we've created a website, connect.hanukkahhomecoming.org, where sponsoring organizations can list the gatherings that they've planning for Hanukkah.
Wow.
So, for example, you see there, one group has a Hanukkah luau coming up. And this is a peer-to-peer engagement model where organizations can register participants, whether virtual or on-site, or rather on-site and online. And we'll be doing social media campaigns and paid social media ads to drive people to your gatherings. And again, there's no cost, and everyone is welcome, not just synagogues, JCCs, federations, camps. Today I was on the phone with PG Library groups, a global celebration of Hanukkah together. But for those of you that will have on-site gatherings, think about the relational component of what you'll do with the people when they arrive. How will they meet each other? How can they create some friendships during your Hanukkah gatherings? That's the key to building a relational community.
This is amazing. I'm scrolling through the website. I had an idea 2 decades ago that the first thing I did was I bought the URL, but then I never knew what to do with it, called Predate. And the idea was, this was, I'm sure, based on you, that as kids, we went on play dates. As young adults, we found love on JDate, although that's apparently not anymore. But for an eternal connection, you make a Predate. And the idea was, it was based on my wife. She doesn't really like going to shul. That's just not her thing. But if her best friend is going to be there, she'll go.
That's right.
She'll go.
That's right.
She'll go. And if we can stop making it about the program or even the experience and focus more on, as you said before, the relationships that experience or that program engenders and nurtures, then we have a shot.
I agree. If you just think about the people, for example, in synagogue communities that have been there forever, why have they been there forever?
Yeah.
Well, they may be religious But my guess is that most of them have very deep connections with the clergy, with the teachers, with the staff, and with each other, with friends, with a circle of friends, for sure.
Yeah. What is all of this possible? All of this relationship. I shouldn't say is it possible. Do you have any tips for how we can do this kind of relational work, relational focused work for those folks who can't yet come on site, for those folks who maybe are too far away or can't drive at night, or all the many reasons why people may choose to stay in digital space? What can I, as a clergy person, as a community leader, as a lay leader, what are the types of things that I can do to do this sacred work?
You can, as an individual, you can reach out to people to create a Zoom meeting one-on-one. You could create a small group around an interest. During the pandemic, the most popular small groups have actually been cooking groups, book club groups, groups that watch a movie together and then talk about it, or watch it and then talk about it, or a television program. Groups that share an affinity, something they like to do together, or a life stage, or even people in neighborhoods who gather together virtually. So that's what we can do as leaders of the Jewish community. And then to help people connect with each other, breakout rooms during these Zoom experiences are wonderful opportunities to do either a chevruta, partnership learning, or a group of 4 or a group of 6. And as I pointed out earlier, opportunities for just schmoozing, just feeling the presence of others in the community who care about you and check in with you. And then many, many, many communities have gone the next step, which is to deliver a challah for Shabbat, a shalach manot bag for Purim, a matzah for Passover. Hanukkah's coming up. Sufganiot, some donuts to someone's front porch who is not yet comfortable coming out to the building. All of those things are messages of warmth, support, and connectedness.
Beautiful. I have one last question for you.
Sure.
And it's a big one, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. You feel free to just swat this one away. But what's coming? What is the next big shift that the Jewish community needs to make, not wants to make or necessarily will make, but what's the next big shift that we need to make to remain relevant in the lives of young folks who don't seem all that inclined to be active parts of our community?
Well, I think the trend of DIY, do-it-yourself Judaism, is real. I think this is the single biggest challenge to the organized Jewish community, meaning the organizations, our synagogues, our JCCs, our federations, even our schools and camps. If I can dip into any service in the world, any religious service in the world, for no pay, no cost, if I can do virtual learning with some of the great Jewish teachers of our time at little or no cost, if I can get all the resources I could possibly need to celebrate holidays and life cycle events, if I can find clergy online to do my religious needs at a fraction of what typical synagogue dues might be, then what's the value offer? what's the value proposition of a congregation, a JCC? A JCC, I'm working out at home. I'm on my Peloton. You know, uh, what are we offering to people if it's not community of relationships? Yes, we do fabulous programming. All that's important. Yes, we meet people's needs when they make themselves known to us. Yes, every single rabbi, cantor, educator, JCC director, Jewish communal professional I know has done heroic work in the last 19 months to keep our Jewish community organizations alive. But I think needs to happen in the future, your program here is about the future, is that it's not that the organizations have to compete with all of these online offers. It's that we need to embrace the opportunities and offer the things that people may not get as deeply online as they can in person. God willing, as we gather back together in person, we'll understand the purposes of our gathering have got to be relational in nature.
That's such an interesting idea and I hope it's true, that this moment in time, that this experience of the past 2 years will, once we come back together at the Hanukkah homecoming or in services, that we will remember why we were doing this in the first place. That we may have forgotten a little bit. You know, we got lost in the tuna fish at Kid, tuna fish versus egg salad debate, or the latke hamantaschen great debate. We got lost in the minutiae and we forgot why we were really doing this in the first place.
Mm. Well, God willing, we'll be back to tuna fish and egg salad.
Please God, please
because,
God.
Because that is one part of what you can't get online.
That's right.
And it's an important part. When synagogue people would say to me, "Oh, Ron, we can't serve Starbucks quality coffee. We don't have it in our budget." I said, "Are you kidding? Should be the top priority in your budget. They have excellent coffee and an excellent spread for the kiddush, because that's the glue of the social interaction that you want to see happen after the worship experience is over in a synagogue or after the program is over in a JCC. That's the glue. That's the opportunity for building relationships if we only use it."
Right. And Margaret notes that she saw at a Starbucks, actually, that their mission statement is a community that creates an environment of warmth and belonging. So if Starbucks can do it, then surely we can do it.
I used to say, if you get a warmer greeting at Walmart than you do at your synagogue, we have work to do.
Wow. Yes. Yes. We need someone with buttons, a shirt full of buttons, standing at the door, welcoming. Absolutely. Ron Wolfson, I really am. I'm just so grateful to have the opportunity to speak with you. I want to encourage everyone, please, please, please go visit HanukkahHomecoming.org. Tell your rabbi, your cantor, your president about this, your executive director. Get them to sign up to add their activities to this global calendar. Add yourself to this amazing map of where all these people are coming from. It's really inspiring.
Thank you. And then once you've registered, you'll be directed to the connect.hanukkahhomecoming.org. And by the way, our friend Craig Taubman is producing 3 videos that you'll be able to use with your social media collateral. And it could be a happening. So we welcome you.
Amazing. Amazing. So grateful for your time, for your wisdom, for everything. Do me a favor, everyone, go out, make sure to grab this. I've got the old ones here, but grab the A+. Tell me the full title again. It's it's called,
whoops. Where are
There you go. I got you.
Raising A+ Human Beings. Whoops. Crafting a Jewish School Culture of Academic Excellence and AP Kindness.
Oh my gosh, I love AP kindness. I love AP kindness. Oh.
Yeah. It's about, and by the way, the principles in the book apply to any organization, not just schools. But we have 4,000 copies out in just 5 months, so it's been resonating with the community. And aplushumanbeings.com, you can get the book.
Plus spelled out, or the plus symbol?
Yes, APLUS.
Great.
Humanbeings.com.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Thanks, David.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations on all your great work.
Thank you. Friends, next week, Rabbi Sherry Kohler Fox is going to be joining us. One of the most amazing educators in the Jewish world is going to be joining us as we continue our conversation, because we can't wait. The future is starting now. Bye, Ron.